When do you decide to pass that on to the consumer? If you're paying more, I was talking to a local pizza owner who was talking to me about the price for chicken and mozzarella and all these things and how much more he's paying. When do you have to pass that on because you're not able to really make a profit anymore? So Brian, I guess I'll give that one to you first.
I guess from my perspective, you have to look at the nature of the goods. So you're talking about perishable goods or menu costs immediately. And I suspect we're seeing a move now that most restaurants in particular will need to pass those costs on almost immediately to sustain themselves. The pandemic showed that businesses had to pivot, be adaptable and flexible. Now that adaptability and flexibility also includes working with one's consumers or customers and have them recognize their increased costs, which they recognize every time they go to the pump.
If I could jump on that, Elizabeth, because what Brian said is absolutely right. And I'm really seeing two things for my clients that are B2B businesses, that sell to other businesses. These are manufacturers, service providers, distributors. They're leveraging the data that they have because we have a lot more data than Brian's and my parents had when we last saw inflation back in the 70s. So I'm seeing a lot of clients really be very specific as to their price increases. They're focusing on certain customers, certain product lines, certain areas where instead of being lazy and just saying, oh, we're having a 10% increase across the board. I'm seeing a lot of my clients say, well, we're not going to increase so much for this guy because he's been really good, but we are going to increase a little bit more for this person because we need to make money there. So leveraging data has been really big. That's number one. The other thing that I'm seeing, and Brian, I'd love you to jump in, on this. But the other thing I'm seeing with my retail clients and restaurants in particular, a lot of them are practicing shrinkflation. Mm-hmm. Brian,
yes,
right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, James. We're seeing not only inflation, we're seeing shrinkflation, and on the manufacturing side, it's a supply chain issue.
Yep.
If you're not planning, not only for the end of the year, but if you're not planning well into 2023, you may be in a very difficult position. In fact, those who have goods that can stay on the shelf for a period of time, given the volatility that small businesses, actually all businesses are facing, there needs to be some forward planning, and data is going to be key and crucial for that planning, for planning purposes.
And I'd love to even jump on that, Elizabeth.
Yeah, no, go for it.
So what Brian just said, guys, you got to be communicating with your customers. I mean, come on, we all have customer relationship management systems, Salesforce and Google. We have email systems, and again, I'm only telling you what my clients are doing. They know that we're in an area of increasing prices. Your customers know that as well. What they really want to know is when and how much. They don't want to be surprised. So like Brian said, if you've got lead times that are going to be extended, if you see a price increase is coming, you got to leverage the data that you have. You got to use your email systems, your CRM systems, communicate with your customers so that they know what's coming down the pike. It's the only way you really can navigate through all this stuff is by having that kind of communication.
And what about those supply chain shortages too? Because for a lot of them, they don't even have the goods that they need to sell.
So with what Jean said, communication through the entire supply chain, from the start of the resources right in the beginning to the manufacturing process, straight through the transportation process, all the way to the end consumer. If you're not communicating, you have an issue. And supply chain, this is a period of volatility. There is no doubt about it. And we're seeing supply chain constraints. We're seeing bottlenecks. Right now, people are not talking about the ports, but as we've been hearing about the reopening of some manufacturing, maybe in China and elsewhere because of lockdowns, activities at ports may pick up rather rapidly, and those bottlenecks will come back. So we have to look at this from a very holistic perspective. But for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, this challenge also creates an opportunity. It's an opportunity to leverage the data and maybe re-examine the sourcing of your goods.
Right.
Maybe it's time to reshore.
Yep, it's a great point. I also want to get back to that. We mentioned shrinkflation, just in case anybody watching this are not familiar. Shrinkflation is basically you're selling a little bit less of something, but for the same price. Like if you buy a bag of Doritos now,
yes,
it used to be 9.75 ounces, and now it's 9.25 ounces, but it's the same price, you know? So I'm seeing a lot of clients do the same thing. I think like chicken McNuggets or nuggets at Burger King, you get 8 instead of 10, but for the same. I mean, companies are doing this across the
Right.
country. That's can help you with your supply chain issues because you're selling a little bit less of something for the same price, and it may help you charge, get over sort of that inflation perception that you're raising prices on your customers. So
But we
consider